صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. A second salawat for the love of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. For the hastening of the reappearance of the Imam of our time, a third salawat in the loudest of your voices. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ثم أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Continuing our discussion on the essence of the Quran and the reality of the Quran. Over the past several nights, we've been trying to gain an appreciation of the reality of the book that we have in our hands, the book that we call the Quran, that book that we have on our shelves, that book that we recite in our daily prayers, that book that we recite when people pass away. What is the reality of this book? And we mentioned, just as a quick recap, we mentioned that the Quran, in its essence, is not a worldly phenomenon. The Quran is not something that is dunyawi. Its source, its origin is عند Allah. It is from that higher world. We mentioned that the Quran, when it speaks about the world of creation, it presents to us a sort of hierarchy whereby you have the material world, which is represented by al-hayatud dunya, and even the word dunya means that which is low. The world where there are limitations, the world of finiteness, the world of limited resources, the material, empirical world. And then, as you go up this ladder, this hierarchy, there are worlds that are immaterial, that are spiritual, that are unlimited in nature. And those higher worlds, the Quran refers to them as indallah. They are the places of close proximity to God. Not in the physical sense, but because that world is immaterial and spiritual, it's associated with Him. And therefore you find that the Quran is from that higher realm, because the Quran is essentially a representation of divine knowledge. Now, in order to bring that high, lofty reality down into this lower world, as we mentioned, and I've alluded to this in almost every session, it has to undergo a process of tanzeel. It has to be simplified for us mortals, for us limited beings, to experience, to appreciate. That it has to be distilled. It has to be modified and altered so we as physical beings can experience it on some level. And we gave the example of Jibreel taking on human form, so Maryam alayhi salam can experience him, can see him. So even though Jibreel is in human form, he still retains his angelic essence. That just because he looks human, he's not like every other human. This is Jibreel. He appears like every other human, but the essence is angelic. So there has to be this process of tanzeel. And we gave many analogies and many examples. And we also mentioned that in that process of tanzeel, when it comes down, unlike things in dunya, it doesn't depart its original position. So it's not that the Quran was in the preserved tablet and then it departed and then it came down to this earthly life, this dunya. It still retains its position there, but it's taking on a form here. And we gave the example of the sun. Just because the rays of the sun have reached the earth, it doesn't mean that the sun has moved its position. So that reality is still in Lawh al-Mahfuz. And what we have here is an image of that is suitable for this world. And it's not an image, and this is what we mentioned last night, and it's not an image that is 14 centuries old. It is a live image of what is up there. And I gave the example of, looking at a photograph of your mother that's 20 years old, and then FaceTiming with your mother. What's the difference? One is it's an old image. It's an outdated image. And the other is a live image. What you have, what you recite is a reflection of that living reality, that present reality. So now, continuing our discussion. We've understood that the Quran is a living book. It's not just because it looks like other books, it has a binding, it has pages, it contains words, sentences. So just because it looks like other books, it doesn't mean that it is like other books. It's a living book. Every other book that you read it once, twice, 3 times, and you get bored of it, right? You're familiar with the plot, you've understood the lessons, the characters, you're familiar with them. After a few times, even if it's your favorite book, it loses its freshness. You get tired of it. But the Quran is not like that. You can read the Quran over and over and over, and it continues to reveal itself to you. You don't get bored of it. Even though it's recited every day, when you recite it sometimes, and I'm sure you've experienced this, sometimes you read a surah that you've been reading all your life, and it's as though you're reading it for the first time. You discover things about it that escaped you before. Why is that? It's because it's a living book. It's because every year on Laylatul Qadr, it's being revealed again. It's being renewed. As we mentioned last night, لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ رَبِيعٍ. Everything has a spring. وَرَبِيعُ الْقُرْآنِ شَهْرُ Ramadhan. And the spring of the Quran is the month of Ramadan. Spring is when things are renewed. And you only say that something has a spring if it has the potential for life. You don't point to a rock or a piece of wood and say this can experience a spring. It's dead. Something that's dead cannot experience a spring. So the Quran in the month of Ramadan, because of the nights of Qadr, it's being revealed every year. It's renewed. It's refreshed. It doesn't lose that vitality, that life. There's a tradition that I'd like to share with you from a tafsir that many of you might not be familiar with. And unfortunately, I don't think it's been translated into English. Maybe Urdu or Farsi, but I don't think it's been translated into English. The tafsir is called Tafsir al-Ayyashi. We're familiar with Tafsir al-Mizan, Tafsir al-Namuna, the contemporary commentaries, there is a tafsir that is called Tafsir al-Ayyashi. Tafsir al-Ayyashi was written by a scholar by the name of Muhammad ibn Mas'ud. He was a contemporary of Sheikh al-Kulayni. You know Al-Kafi, the author of Al-Kafi. He was living during the same time as the author of Al-Kafi. And he was Sunni. He was a Sunni scholar who became Shia. He embraced the school of Ahlul Bayt. And he didn't just stop there. He traveled to all of the learning centers in the Muslim world to become a Shi'i scholar. You know, it's one thing to embrace the madhab of Ahlul Bayt, but he travels to Baghdad and Qom. And then one of the most important books that he writes is this book, Tafsir al-Ayyashi, which is a tafsir of the Quran. It's a hadith-based tafsir of the Quran. He doesn't comment. He goes to the verses of the Quran and he collects all of the statements of Ahlul Bayt where they give a tafsir of that verse. Some of them have ahadith and others don't. In Tafsir al-Ayyashi, if you go to the commentary on Surah Al-Ra'd, Surah Al-Ra'd is what surah of the Quran? Surah number 13, right? Surah number 13, Surah Al-Ra'd, the chapter of thunder, ayah number 7. He mentions a narration where there's a man by the name of Abdul Rahim al-Qusayr. Abdul Rahim ibn al-Qusayr, Abdul Rahim al-Qusayr, he is one of the companions of Imam al-Baqir. Allahumma salli ala Abdul Rahim al-Qusayr. He reports this narration, and believe me, brothers, we owe a great debt to these individuals, that they have conversations with the Imams, and they have the wisdom to think that, yeah, maybe I should record this so future generations can benefit. You know, sometimes we take it for granted. We owe a great debt to these companions of the Imams, that when they're asking the Imams, they're not selfish. They're thinking that I'm going to preserve this for future generations. So he says, كنت يوما من الأيام عند أبي جعفر. He says, one day I was sitting with Imam al-Baqir. You know, how lucky is it that he just says, you know, one day I was with Imam al-Baqir, the other day I was with Imam al-Sadiq. You know, we have to really cry about the fact that we're in ghaiba, that we don't have access to the Imam. He says, one day I was with Imam al-Baqir, and he said the Imam started to talk to me. You know, in many cases it's the companion who asks the Imam, but here the Imam starts the conversation. He says, Ya Abd al-Rahim. So he's sitting with the Imam, and the Imam looks at him and he calls him by his name. He says, Ya Abd al-Rahim. And look at the way he responds. He says, Qultu labbaik. The Imam addresses him. He doesn't just say yes. He says labbaik. Look at the akhlaq of the students of the Ahlul Bayt. Labbaik is an expression in Arabic, and it's used by someone who is very lowly, like a servant who is responding to his master. And he's saying, here I am at your service. You know, look at the adab that he has with the Imam. He says, Ya Abd al-Rahim. He says, labbaik, at your service, O Imam. The Imam then recites to him ayah number 7 of Surah Al-Ra'd, where Allah says, the last part of the ayah, Innama, he tells Abdul Rahim that Allah says in the Quran, addressing the Prophet, Innama anta mundhir, wa likulli qawmin had. You, O Muhammad, you are a warner, and for every people there is a guide. لِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ هَادٍ. And then Imam al-Baqir tells him that the Prophet said during his life, he says, أَنَا الْمُنذِرُ. The Prophet says, I am the warner. وَعَلِيٌّ الْهَادِ. And Ali is the guide. Now, Imam al-Baqir, he says, the verse says, وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ هَادٍ. And every group, every generation has a guide. So the first generation of Muslims after the Prophet, Ali was the guide. So Imam al-Baqir asks him, وَمَنِ الْهَادُ الْيَوْمِ. Who is the guide today? Look at how the Imams, when they teach their students, all of their discussions revolve around the Quran. Who is the guide today? وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ هَادٍ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُنذِرٌ. So you can't say, oh, it's talking about the sunnah of the Prophet. Allah already said, إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُنذِرٌ وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ هَادٍ. Who is this guide in every generation? So he's basically testing Abdul Rahim. It's kind of like a pop quiz. The Imam is speaking, he gives you a pop quiz right on the spot. Who is this guide in every generation? Who is the guide today? So the man, Abdul Rahim al-Qusayr, he says, فَسَكَتْتُ طَوِيلًا. He said, I remained silent for a long period of time. He didn't answer the question right away. And this is also a lesson for us. That he's a scholar, but he doesn't speak with haste. They think, these followers of Ahlul Bayt, they think before they speak. You and I today, we don't think before we speak. We talk, an idea comes to our mind, we have to go on social media and post it, and we have to spread it all around the world without even giving a thought to what are the implications of these words, how are these words going to be interpreted, what are the ramifications. He says, فَسَكَتْتُ طَوِيلًا. I stayed quiet. ثُمَّ رَفَعْتُ رَأْسِي. And then I raised my head. So he was thinking for a while. فَقُلْتُ. I said to the Imam, جُعِلْتُ فِدَاكَ هِيَ فِيكُمْ. That this ayah is about you, Ahlul Bayt. تُوَارِثُونَهَا رَجُلٌ فَرَجُلٌ. This position of being the guide is inherited, one after the other. And then he says, حَتَّى انْتَهَتْ إِلَيْكَ. Until it reached you. And he points at Imam al-Baqir. فَأَنْتَ جُعِلْتُ فِدَاكَ الْهَادِ. You, O Imam al-Baqir, you are the guide today. You are the meaning of this verse. The Imam alayhi salam, he says, صدقت. You're correct. Ya Abdul Rahim. Inna al-Qur'an. Now listen to this. Inna al-Qur'an hayyun la yamut. The Qur'an is the living that does not die. The Qur'an is the living that does not die. Wal-ayah. And this verse, and every verse, hayyatun la tamut. And every verse is living and does not die. فَلَوْ كَانَتِ الْآيَةِ نَزَلَتْ فِي الْأَقْوَامِ مَاتُوا فَمَاتَ الْقُرْآنِ. If you find a verse in the Quran and you say that this ayah, this verse no longer applies today, that means that verse is dead. Because when a verse is outdated, when it becomes obsolete, that means it's dead. And the Imam alayhi salam, he says, no verse of the Quran is dead. Each verse is alive. It's never irrelevant. It's never obsolete. And this is important because this is a way to refute many people who say, oh, these verses are about that specific time and they don't have any relevance today. Ahlul Bayt say that the Quran is living. If you say one part of the Quran doesn't apply anymore, that means that you're saying that part of the Quran is dead. Part of the Quran is not living. And you find that because the Quran is alive, in every generation it has to be contained in a heart that is alive. Right? It has to, the meanings of the Quran, all of those layers have to be carried by someone who is alive. The hujjah of Allah, the proof of God on earth. There's another tradition from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, salawatullahi alayhi. He says, so this idea of the Quran being alive, we're not talking about just one hadith. There are many ahadith where the Imams speak about this notion of the Quran being a living book. Imam al-Sadiq says, Inna al-Qur'ana hayyun lam yamut. The Quran is living and it has not died. وَإِنَّهُ يَجْرِي كَمَا يَجْرِي اللَّيْلُ وَالنَّهَارُ. that the Quran is living and it is dynamic. It is as dynamic as the alteration of day and night. In the same way that day and night, it's moving, it's changing, it's dynamic, the Quran has that same dynamism. وَكَمَا تَجْرِ الشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرِ, in the same way that the sun always rises and gives new life. And every day, the gravitational pull of the moon, it gives life. It's interacting with us. Ahlul Bayt say the Quran is the same way. It has that magnetism to it. It has that ongoing benefit. It's a living book. So the Quran is a living book in two senses, really. It's a living book because even when the Quran is speaking about specific incidents. So for example, Allah in the Quran, He speaks about the Battle of Badr. The Battle of Badr happened how many times in history? One time. The verses are speaking about a particular historical incident. But the lessons that Allah wants us to learn from that specific historical incident transcend time. They are timeless. When Allah tells us about the story of Yusuf, how many times did Yusuf live? He lived once. He was born, he lived his youthful years, he became an old man and he died. Allah is speaking about a life that was lived thousands of years ago. But the lessons from that life are timeless. You know, if you read Surah Yusuf, why does Allah call it the best of stories? Now, even though you might not go through the specific trials and tribulations of Yusuf, you will in your life experience the things that Yusuf experienced. Yusuf was betrayed by those who are closest to him. You can bet that in life you're going to experience betrayal. Yusuf alayhi salam was a victim of envy and jealousy. You can bet that in life you will be a victim of envy and jealousy. In life, you're going to lose loved ones. You're going to be separated from loved ones. Yusuf was separated from his family. He felt that loneliness. You're going to go through that in life. Yusuf found himself at the bottom of a dark well. He was alone in complete darkness. Now, you might not fall into a physical well, but I can promise you there are going to be times in your life where you will feel like Yusuf. You're going to feel like that little boy who is in darkness. That you're going to feel like you have no one. You know, and when life starts to improve, you know, so he goes through all of these trials and tribulations, and then he goes into slavery, right? He's bought as a slave and he's sold in a slave market, right? And you're probably going to think to yourself that, you know, why do bad things happen to good people? Why is this happening to me? I'm a good person. Was Yusuf a bad person? Allah shows you that when you suffer in life, it's not about you being good or bad. Allah wants you to grow. He wants you to develop as a human being. And then when you get out of those trials and tribulations, you know, then he finds himself in the palace of Zulaykha. Now he has a pretty sweet job. He's living in a palace, you know, he's making some money now, life is pretty good. When you think that you're out of the storm, what happens next? He ends up in jail. So sometimes in life, you know, you get out of one problem and you think that, okay, now I can chill, now life is getting good, and then you get sideswiped again. Then you end up in prison, you're falsely accused, your reputation is trashed. Imagine being a prophet, you're ma'soom, and everyone in Egypt thinks that you tried to sleep with the wife of the Aziz, that you committed zina. All of these things, temptation. So even though you might not live the particular life of Yusuf, the trials, the ups and downs of life that Yusuf had, you're all going to experience it. You're all going to experience it. But what got him through all of those ups and downs? His relationship with Allah. That was the one constant in his life. One day he had money, the next day he doesn't have money. The one day he's a free man, the next day he's a slave. One day he's a regular citizen, the next day he's the head of the Treasury Department. Those ups and downs. Life is not stable. You're going to have those ups and downs, but how do you get through this instability? You connect yourself to the one who is always stable, and that is Allah. You connect yourself to the constant, right? You know, sometimes you feel that you are away from Allah, that you're away, that you feel distant. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does He say? وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. We're closer to Him than His jugular vein. Allah is constant. If you feel that you are away from Allah, who moved? You moved. Allah doesn't abandon His servants. You decided to go somewhere else. So the Quran, brothers and sisters, it's living. It's a living book. You know, that's why we have some narrations that call the Quran, they refer to the Quran as Al-Quran al-Samit, the silent Quran. And that's a very interesting description of the Quran. To describe the Quran as being silent. That's a powerful description. You know why? Because you only describe something as silent if it has the power to speak. If I point to this piece of wood, can I say this is silent? No, because it doesn't have the potential. It doesn't have the ability to speak. The Quran has the ability to speak. But we call it silent. Why do we call it silent? You know, there's an interesting narration from Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi alayhi. What does the Imam say? ذَلِكَ الْقُرْآنِ. That is the Quran. The Imam was speaking about the merits and the value of the Quran. Please recite a salawat for the our ulama. ذَلِكَ الْقُرْآنِ. That is the Quran. And then look at what the Imam says. فَاسْتَنْطِقُوهُ. Ask the Quran to speak to you. وَلَنْ يَنْطِقَ لَكُمْ. But the Quran is not going to speak to you. أُخْبِرُكُمْ عَنْ. It speaks to me and I'll tell you what it says. Now you may say, why doesn't the Quran speak to me? I'll give you a very simple example. The Quran, just to make you understand what the Imam is saying, the Quran, it's almost like it is a woman that is wearing the hijab. Imagine there's a beautiful woman wearing the hijab and she's very modest. She has so much afaf and haya. A woman like that, do you think she's going to speak to someone who's not mahram? A woman that dignified is not going to reveal her beauty to anyone. You have to make a contract with her, and that contract is called what? Marriage. Only after you commit yourself to her does she reveal her beauty. You and I, we haven't committed ourselves to the Quran. So the Quran is like that noble woman wearing the hijab that will only reveal her beauty to the one who dedicates themselves fully to her, that you commit. And that's why when you get married, you know, if you marry a sister that wears the hijab, only you can see her zina after when? After you do the nikah, after you recite the aqid, after you've demonstrated your commitment. That's when the Quran will reveal itself. You and I, we're not committed to the Quran. You know why? Because we don't read it. We don't have a relationship with it. We listen to everything other than the Quran. We listen to everything but the Quran. The Quran says, you give yourself to me fully, and then I will show you my beauty. Right? Then I'll show you my beauty. Why was the Quran so evident and clear in the eyes of Ali? Why was the beauty of the Quran always manifesting itself to Ali ibn Abi Talib? Because Ali devoted himself fully to the Quran. His heart wasn't split between anything else. It was fully devoted to the Quran. And that's why the Quran says, that's why Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib says, it won't speak to you because you haven't committed yourself to it. But it will speak to me. Because Aliyun ma'al Quran, wal Quran ma'a Ali. That Ali is with the Quran and the Quran is with Ali. And then the Imam, he continues. He says, إِنَّ فِيهِ عِلْمَ مَا مَضَى. This book, that when you read it, has what, 600 pages or so? You read it. The Imam says in this book, عِلْمَ مَا مَضَى, it has the knowledge of all those who came before you. وَعِلْمَ مَا يَأْتِي إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ, it has information about everything until the day of resurrection. وَحُكْمَ مَا بَيْنَكُمْ, it has information about your current affairs. وَبَيَانُ مَا أَصْبَحْتُمْ فِيهِ تَخْتَلِفُونَ, it has the solution for your disputes. And then the Imam says, فَلَوْ سَأَلْتُمْ عَنْهُ لَعَلَّمْتُكُمْ. The Imam says, if you were to ask me these types of questions, I would have told you. I would have informed you. When Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib became the Khalifa, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, instead of the Muslims taking advantage of Ali ibn Abi Talib and asking him, teach us the Quran, reveal to us the beauty that you see that we're not able to see. What did they do? He ruled for 4.5, 5 years, 3 civil wars. Did the Jews fight Ali ibn Abi Talib? Did the Christians come from Rome and they fought Ali ibn Abi Talib? Did the atheists come and fight Ali ibn Abi Talib? Did the Hindus come to fight Ali ibn Abi Talib? Who fought Ali ibn Abi Talib? The Muslims. The same people who say, La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasul, they fought him. They didn't appreciate him. They didn't take an advantage. The Imam said, this is why the Imam was saying, Saluni, Saluni, ask me. Because I'll show you that all of your problems, the solutions are in this book. All of the solutions are there. My dear brothers and sisters, since this is the final night, the night of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen's Shahada, I want to spend a few minutes sharing some insights with you. Brothers and sisters, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, he ruled over an empire that, if you look at today's map, it covers 50 countries on today's map. When we say that Amir al-Mu'mineen was Khalifatul Muslimin, that you're not just talking about, presidency of a specific small region. You're talking about a vast empire. And can you imagine the administrative work, the logistics, how much energy, how much work it takes to ensure that everyone is living a dignified life, that their basic needs are being met. And on top of that, there are civil wars that are happening. Immediately after they gave bay'ah, you have the Battle of Jamal, the Battle of Siffin, the Battle of Nahrawan. So it was a time of political turmoil. The Imam had enemies. There were people who wanted to kill Ali ibn Abi Talib. The Imam had a lot of issues that he was dealing with. So if there's anyone who is busy, it's Ali ibn Abi Talib. He's busy. One day, you guys have heard the story, but I'll share it to you from a different perspective. He was walking, and the beautiful thing about Ali ibn Abi Talib is that even when he's the head of state, he doesn't walk around with an entourage. Sometimes you watch TV and you see that there's a motorcade, right? 60 cars, right? These black Yukons, black Escalades, one after the other, motorcycle after motorcycle. Who is this person? This is someone who works in the ministry of whatever. They're not even the president. These are the types of people that we have. People are dying of hunger in the streets and everybody has a motorcade, an entourage. Amir al-Mu'mineen used to walk alone. Alone. He doesn't have bodyguards. In fact, people, when he used to walk in the marketplace, they didn't even know that he was the Khalifa. When people used to come to Masjid al-Kufa, just like the time of the Prophet, it's not that he had like a throne and he's sitting there and okay, you walk in, okay, that must be the guy. The Imam was so humble, so simple. On one occasion, the Imam is walking in the streets. Today, if you want to talk to even a mayor, good luck. You have to talk to 70 people before you get to them because they're untouchable. You can't even access them. And if it's a king or a president, forget about it. Forget about it. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was walking among the people. He was walking among the people. And he was walking and then he saw a woman who was carrying a heavy bag of food. She was carrying bags. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, she's carrying a bag, right? Some bags. Most of us, we wouldn't even think twice. We would just continue walking. He's the Khalifa. He goes and he says that, can I help you? Please allow me to carry these bags for you. Where's your husband? Why are you carrying this heavy load by yourself? I see you have children with you. That bothered the Imam. Just the sight of a woman carrying heavy bags, the Imam, that was difficult for him to see. What do you think Ali ibn Abi Talib would do if he saw Yemen now? If he saw Palestine? If he sees parts of Pakistan, Afghanistan? If he sees even parts of New Jersey, homeless people, what do you think Ali ibn Abi Talib would do? He goes and he says to her that, Ya Amatallah, where's your husband? Do you have anyone to help you? She says, yes, I had a husband, but he died in battle. And may God never forgive Ali ibn Abi Talib. Because he died responding to his call, and now I'm a widow and I have these orphans. That word, wallah, it burned the heart of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He couldn't even say to her that, hey, I'm the Khalifa. Who are you slandering the Khalifa? He stays silent. And he helps her carry the food home. And he goes home that night. Qambar, who's a servant in the house of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, I saw Ali ibn Abi Talib that night and he couldn't sleep. Ali ibn Abi Talib couldn't sleep. He's the Khalifa. Wallah, sometimes when I look at these political leaders, I don't know how they sleep. Murder, blood is being spilled in the streets because of them. Ali ibn Abi Talib, because there was a widow, one widow, and there were some orphans, and he saw them carrying bags, the Imam could not sleep. The next morning he says, Qambar, come with me. This is the same Imam who is ruling over that vast empire, and he has enemies and the civil wars and all of the problems. No, we make time for this. We're going to make time for this. He goes and he says, we're going to buy food for their family. He goes carrying heavy bags of food and he delivers it to her doorstep. He says to her, do you remember me? I saw you yesterday and I assisted you with carrying the bags. She says, yes, I remember you. He says, I've come to bring some more food for your family. And the Imam, he heard the children crying because they were hungry. So the Imam alayhi salam, he says, do you give me permission to enter? They enter. The Imam alayhi salam asks the woman that, do you want me to bake for you or do you want me to play with the children? She says, let me prepare the food and you distract the children. The Imam alayhi salam, the day before, he was carrying her bags. Today, he's on his knees, crawling with the children. He puts one on his back and he's playing with them, laughing with them. When she finishes preparing the dough, she asks Amir al-Mu'mineen to come and light the tanur, the oven. So he finishes playing. So look at Ali ibn Abi Talib. He was her bag carrier. He was the babysitter for her children. And now he's going to be the baker. He goes to the oven. And look at what Ali ibn Abi Talib does. He lights the fire. And the flames surge. Do you know what he does? He opens his shirt and he puts it close to the fire. And he whispers to himself. He says, ذُقْ يَا Ali. Taste it, O Ali. هَذَا جَزَاءُ مَنْ ضَيَّعَ الْأَرَامِلْ وَالْأَيْتَامِ. This is the punishment for the one who forgets widows and orphans. Look at how strict Ali ibn Abi Talib is with himself. He's baking bread for a widow. You know, the Imam, there are many people that would have been happy to do it for him. The Imam could have just assigned someone to do it. You know, the prestige of the Khilafah. And the Imam did it himself. Her neighbor comes and she sees that Ali ibn Abi Talib is playing with the kids and he's baking, that he's acting like he's a servant in your house. She says to her friend, her neighbor, that what's going on here? This is Ali ibn Abi Talib. This is the Khalifa. He's your babysitter. He's your baker. What's going on? And the woman remembered that yesterday I cursed this man. Yesterday I said, may Allah not forgive Ali ibn Abi Talib. She rushes to him and she says, please, I'm so embarrassed. Please forgive me. I didn't know that it was you. What does the Imam say? Does the Imam say, no, I forgive you? He says, no, you forgive me. I want you to forgive me. I want your children to forgive me. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib sat on the ground and he was putting food in the mouths of these orphans. And he was saying to these little children, please forgive Ali ibn Abi Talib. Are we like that? Do we have that type of compassion, that humility? That even when people wrong us and they say things about us that we don't deserve, we still have that humility. And that's why, brothers and sisters, on the 21st of Ramadan, it was a very difficult night, not just for Bani Hashim. You know, on the 19th, the 20th, and the 21st, everyone finally realized all of those poor families that were receiving assistance, they would find food at their doorstep every night. On the 19th of Ramadan, the 20th, the 21st, when it stopped coming to their doorsteps, when the food stopped reaching them, that's when they realized that all these years, it was Ali ibn Abi Talib who was dropping food at our doorstep. And therefore, everyone now is surrounding the house of Ali. This is a difficult, we have to give our condolences to the orphans on a night like this. That the orphans, they lost their father. It's not just Hassan and Hussein lost their father. It's not that Sayyidah Zainab lost her father. All of the orphans. We send our condolences to all of these orphans around the world today who are dying. That if you had someone like Ali ibn Abi Talib, you wouldn't be hungry. You wouldn't be neglected. On a night like this, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is sitting beside his father. We cry for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, but Imam al-Hussein is crying tonight. The wound on the head of Ali ibn Abi Talib is very deep. And the Imam is going in and out of consciousness. Everyone knows that moment is coming, but no one wants to accept that dreadful reality that Ali is going to leave us, that he's leaving this world. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, when his father is unconscious, he takes a band and he puts a bandage around the head of his father. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he wakes up, he regains consciousness, and he feels the tightness of that band around his head. He feels that there's a band now around my head. He gathers all of his children and he says, Awladi, oh my children, Awladi man alladhi assabani. Oh my children, who is the one who put this bandage on my head? There was silence, no one responded. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen again asks, Awladi man alladhi assabani. Who is the one who put this bandage around my head? Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam says to his father, Ya abata, oh my father, it was me. I'm the one who put the bandage around that wound. I could not see the wound. I wanted to cover it up. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, he looks at the face of Hussein and he begins to cry. Why does the Imam cry? He says, Waladi Hussein, ashfaqta alay. Oh my son Hussein, you felt sorry for me. وَفِيَّ جُرْحٌ وَاحِدٌ. Oh my beloved Hussein, your heart broke for me. And I only have one wound on my body. Oh my beloved Hussein. من الذي يعصبك وأنت على رمضاء كربلاء وفيك عشرات الجروح. Oh my beloved Hussein, you saw that I had one wound on my body and you covered it with a bandage. Who will be there with you on the 10th of Muharram in Karbala? Who will be there to tend your wounds when you have hundreds of wounds on your body? Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, he gathers all of the children. He looks at Imam al-Hassan. He says, Bunay Hassan, oh my beloved Hassan, oh my children, inni maqboodun hadhihi al-layla. He says that tonight I'm going to die. Tonight I'm going to leave this life. Bunay Hassan, anta wasiyyi wal qa'imu bil amri ba'di. Oh my son Hassan, you will be my successor. You will be the one to look after the affairs of the Muslims after me. Then he turns to Hussein and he says, Ya Hussein, wa anta sharikun bil wasiyya. You are a partner in the testament. You are a supporter of your brother Al-Hassan. And then the Imam alayhi salam, the narrations say that he begins to sweat. They ask him, Ya Abul Hassan, why are you sweating? What's wrong? He says to them, this is a sign of death. فإني سمعت حبيبي رسول الله يقول إن المؤمن إذا نزل عليه الموت عرق جبينه. I heard your beloved grandfather say, then when a mu'min dies, he begins to sweat. This is an indication that my time is approaching. He then tells Imam al-Hassan that my beloved Hassan, my son, if you wish to seek revenge after me, فَضَرْبَةٌ بِضَرْبَةٍ, I only give you permission to strike Ibn Muljim once. He struck me once, and therefore you can only strike him once. Do not be excessive in retaliation. And then the Imam says, and do not allow anyone to mutilate his body. فإني سمعت حبيبي رسول الله يقول إياكم والمثلى ولو بالكلب العقور. I heard your grandfather say to never mutilate the body of a human being. Do not even mutilate the body of a rabid dog. They gather around Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. One child kisses the hands of Ali, the other kisses the feet of Ali. Suddenly, brothers and sisters, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen stretches his feet, Ya Mu'mineen. He stretches his arms, he closes his eyes, and as he's reciting, Bismillahi wa billah, wa fi sabilillah, wa ala millati rasulillah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. As the Imam is reciting his final words, his soul departs his body. At that moment, Hassan, Hussein, and Zainab, all of the children in the house, as they see the motionless body of their father, they all cry out, Wa Aliyya. Everyone together, Wa Aliyya, Wa Madluma, Wa Shahida. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with these tears that we shed for the commander of the faithful, to be tears that cleanse us of our sins. That through these tears we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to have mercy on us when we are on our deathbeds, to have mercy on us when we enter our graves on the first night, to have mercy on us in Alamul Barzakh, to have mercy on us when we come out of our graves, that we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to congregate all of us under the banner of Amir al-Mu'mineen on the Day of Judgment. يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.